The human cost of total isolation. Inside America's most secure prison, the walls are more than concrete. They are a test of the human mind. While Part 1 explored who ends up behind these steel doors, Part 2 takes you deeper. Into the daily life of inmates who spend 23 hours a day alone, into their psychological battles, and into the rare insights of the people who guard them. We'll reveal the mental strain, coping mechanisms, and real consequences of life in near-total isolation. From documented research to insider observations, this is not just a story about crime or punishment. It's about how the human mind survives, or doesn't, when stripped of connection. By the end, you'll understand why ADX Florence isn't just a prison. It's a psychological crucible where the very limits of human endurance are tested, and the lessons it offers may change the way you think about incarceration forever. All information presented is from publicly available court records, government documents, peer-reviewed research, and verified journalism. No classified, confidential, or protected inmate information is disclosed. This content serves educational and public interest journalism purposes under First Amendment protections. Viewer discretion is advised. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. The daily life of an inmate. Life inside ADX Florence is measured not in hours or days, but in routines designed to strip away influence, control behavior, and enforce isolation. Inmates wake in cells that are barely larger than a parking space. Breakfast arrives through a small steel slot. Exercise happens alone in a small concrete pen. Work assignments, education, and communications are tightly regulated. Even recreation is solitary, reading, drawing, or writing in journals, with every object carefully monitored. Every movement is observed. Every interaction is limited. The smallest infraction can lead to additional restrictions. For the inmates, daily life is a mental battlefield. Even those convicted of serious crimes describe the isolation as a force more punishing than physical confinement. Time stretches endlessly, and the mind begins to compensate, imagining sounds, patterns, or conversations that are not real. It is a life that most people cannot imagine, and yet it is reality for the roughly 400 inmates who call ADX Florence home. Surviving the mind. Prolonged isolation has measurable effects on the human mind, even in individuals with no prior mental health issues. Some inmates adapt by creating routines and mental exercises, counting, writing, or imagining elaborate scenarios. Others develop coping mechanisms that, while functional, reveal the strain of complete solitude. Talking to themselves, crafting imaginary companions, or retreating entirely into thought. Dr. Craig Haney's research found that these adaptations are often the difference between maintaining some semblance of sanity and descending into profound psychological difficulty. Symptoms like insomnia, anxiety, paranoia, and memory loss are common, and the longer the isolation continues, the more severe the effects can be. Inmates describe the silence as a pressure that gradually erodes the mind. For some, it creates self-awareness and reflection. For others, it becomes a relentless test of endurance, a confrontation with the darkest corners of thought. The human stories behind the cases. Beyond the statistics, isolation, and security protocols are the stories of the individuals themselves. Men whose crimes made headlines and whose presence required the nation's highest security classification. Some are convicted terrorists, others are organized crime leaders, and some are inmates whose violence within other facilities demanded extreme separation. Public records, sentencing documents, and federal court filings provide insight into why each individual was placed in ADX Florence. Yet behind these records are people navigating a world with almost no human contact, limited sensory input, and a life defined by confinement. Their experiences raise uncomfortable questions about justice, punishment, and what it means to survive in an environment designed to remove all influence, including human connection. Media investigations and the public eye. Even the most secure facilities cannot escape scrutiny forever. ADX Florence, despite its isolation and secrecy, has occasionally been observed by journalists, researchers, and media crews, providing rare glimpses into a world most of the public will never see. In 2019, a major investigative program gained access to the facility. Their team documented the extreme isolation, the sterile concrete corridors, and the rigid routines that define every day inside. Interviews with former staff and mental health professionals highlighted the psychological strain of total isolation. Some inmates reportedly went years without meaningful human contact, while others exhibited visible signs of mental distress. The report raised questions about the balance between security and human rights. Was the facility a necessary measure for national safety? Or had isolation become an experiment on the human mind? The investigation brought the Supermax into public consciousness, sparking debates in courts, Congress, and the media. For a facility designed to be invisible to the outside world, ADX Florence had never felt more visible. The policy and ethical debates. ADX Florence is more than just a prison. It is a focal point for ongoing debates about ethics, policy, and the limits of punishment. Federal lawmakers, human rights advocates, and criminal justice experts have all weighed in on whether the extreme isolation practiced at ADX is sustainable or humane. Proponents argue that the facility is essential for containing inmates who pose extraordinary security risks. From convicted terrorists to violent organized crime leaders, the population requires a level of control unachievable in standard prisons. Opponents, however, cite peer-reviewed research showing the profound psychological effects of long-term solitary confinement. Dr. Craig Haney and others have documented anxiety, paranoia, memory loss, and institutional adaptation difficulties, even in inmates with no prior mental health issues. Legal cases and reports from organizations like the ACLU have challenged certain practices, arguing that prolonged isolation may violate constitutional standards and human rights. The debate is not theoretical. It influences federal policies, court rulings, and public perception. The challenge is balancing absolute security with ethical treatment, a question that remains unresolved decades after the prison first opened. ADX Florence sits at the intersection of law, security, and psychology, forcing society to ask a difficult question. How much isolation is too much, even for the most dangerous individuals? Psychological case studies of inmates. The human mind is resilient, but only up to a point. Inside ADX Florence, years of near-total isolation have revealed limits that most people cannot imagine. Peer-reviewed research and documented case studies show patterns of psychological deterioration among inmates confined to the Supermax. Sleep disturbances. Inmates often lose the ability to maintain a regular sleep cycle. Light from narrow windows or constant fluorescent lighting disrupts circadian rhythms. Cognitive impairments. Long-term isolation can affect memory, concentration, and decision-making, even in individuals with previously normal cognitive function. Emotional volatility, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, and paranoia are common. Inmates may overreact to minor stimuli or withdraw completely. Behavioral adaptation. Some develop routines or mental exercises to maintain sanity, while others retreat entirely into hallucinations or self-talk. These documented cases are drawn from publicly available research, including studies by Dr. Craig Haney and observations by legal and mental health professionals. Even inmates with no prior history of mental illness can exhibit institutional adaptation difficulties, where the brain struggles to cope with the absence of human contact. For staff and researchers, these psychological case studies are a sobering reminder. ADX Florence is not just a high-security prison. It is an environment where the very architecture of isolation interacts with the human mind, producing outcomes that are measurable, profound, and sometimes unpredictable. The implications extend beyond the walls. Each case informs policy debates, legal challenges, and the ethical questions that continue to surround Supermax confinement. Rare insights from former staff. Few people outside the Bureau of Prisons have ever truly seen the inner workings of ADX Florence. Former correctional officers and staff provide a rare window into the routines, challenges, and unseen dynamics of the facility. Many describe the work as mentally taxing. Managing inmates who are highly dangerous and psychologically strained requires constant vigilance. Even minor infractions can escalate quickly in an environment where tension is amplified by isolation. Staff often develop strategies to maintain safety while minimizing stress. Observing from control rooms and surveillance monitors, strictly following procedural protocols to avoid unintended contact. Maintaining routines that reduce unpredictability for both inmates and officers. Officers also report emotional challenges. Witnessing the psychological effects of prolonged isolation on inmates, without the ability to intervene fully, creates moral and ethical strain. Many staff describe moments of empathy, recognizing the human cost of the very security measures they enforce. These insider perspectives reveal a paradox. ADX Florence is designed to remove human influence, yet it is staffed by humans whose judgment, vigilance, and ethics are constantly tested. The insights of former staff highlight that the prison is not just a place of confinement, it is a complex social and psychological system where every decision carries weight. The next chapter takes a step back, comparing ADX Florence with other federal Supermax facilities and placing its practices in a broader national context. Comparisons with other federal Supermaxes. ADX Florence is unique, but it exists within a broader network of high-security federal prisons. By comparing its design, protocols, and inmate management with other Supermax facilities, we can better understand why it has earned the nickname Alcatraz of the Rockies. Other federal Supermax prisons implement strict isolation, but few match the extreme sensory deprivation and solitary confinement measures of ADX Florence. Cells are often smaller, but other facilities may allow slightly more interaction, such as group recreation periods, limited programming, or additional human contact during daily routines. ADX Florence distinguishes itself through near total isolation. Inmates spend 22 to 24 hours a day alone with minimal human contact. Architectural design for control, narrow windows, concrete furniture, and steel doors minimize stimuli and remove opportunities for influence. Carefully curated inmate population. Only those deemed the highest risk by federal authorities are placed here. In comparison, other Supermax facilities may house higher populations, allow more educational programs, or integrate social interaction under strict supervision. Yet the psychological outcomes observed at ADX, documented through research and media investigations, suggest that the degree of isolation here produces some of the most extreme mental health challenges in the federal prison system. Understanding these differences provides context for ongoing policy debates. Is ADX Florence an outlier in necessity or an example of what happens when isolation is taken to its most extreme? How does the federal system balance security, rehabilitation, and humane treatment across multiple high-security facilities? The following chapter will explore the broader lessons and implications these comparisons offer for the criminal justice system, mental health policy, and the future of Supermax confinement. Lessons and implications for the criminal justice system. ADX Florence is more than a prison. It is a lens through which the criminal justice system can examine the limits of security, punishment, and human resilience. Years of observation, research, and media scrutiny reveal several key lessons. Isolation has profound psychological consequences. Even the most hardened inmates experience cognitive, emotional, and behavioral changes under prolonged solitary confinement. Mental health deterioration is documented and measurable, influencing legal and ethical debates. Security and humanity must coexist. Extreme measures may control high-risk inmates, but they also pose moral and ethical dilemmas. Policymakers and prison administrators face the ongoing challenge of balancing protection, safety, and humane treatment. Transparency and oversight are critical. Investigations, research studies, and public reporting have demonstrated the importance of accountability. Without scrutiny, policies can become unchecked experiments on human psychology. Policy informs practice and vice versa. Court rulings, mental health research, and staff experiences shape federal Supermax operations. In turn, these practices influence national conversations about justice, rehabilitation, and the role of incarceration in society. ADX Florence forces the nation to confront uncomfortable questions. How much isolation is ethically permissible even for dangerous offenders? Can the system protect both the public and the mental well-being of inmates? What does the future of federal high-security prisons look like in the 21st century? While the prison continues to operate under its original mission, containing the nation's highest-risk inmates, the lessons it offers extend far beyond its walls. They challenge society to reflect on justice, security, and the human mind, leaving us with questions that are as compelling as they are unresolved. ADX Florence is more than just steel, concrete, and security protocols. It is a window into the limits of human endurance, a case study in isolation, and a mirror reflecting the ethical challenges of modern incarceration. What happens inside these walls isn't just about crime, it's about the human mind under pressure, the consequences of absolute control, and the questions society must ask about justice and humanity. If this journey into the heart of America's most secure prison gave you insight, shock, or a new perspective, don't stop here. Like this video, share it with friends, and comment below with your thoughts on whether isolation can ever be justified. And make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. In our next episode, we'll explore real-life inmate stories, shocking psychological cases, and rare insights that reveal the untold truths of America's Supermax system. The walls of ADX Florence may be sealed, but the questions it raises are for all of us.